Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Source Material Live. I'm still your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And welcome back to the show, your Transformers expert and mine, Cole Marentette. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am very well indeed. I've got my decaf coffee here, so we should be able to get through this without any issues. So, you and I have been kicking the ball back and forth about All Hail Megatron for a while now. Just to recap for everybody, we did Revolution back when I think the last night came out. And yeah, I said to Jesse, I said, hey, pick a Transformers book. And he picked the Transformers with everyone else book. And that's why Jesse doesn't pick the schedule anymore. And I had a lot of questions in Revolution. Revolution took place after All Hail Megatron, and that was the first thing that I had asked you, Cole, at the time. This was in the aftermath of what happened in this book, and we'll talk about it as we break down the story. But how much took place? How many series in the IDW Transformers universe took place between All Hail Megatron and Revolution?
Oh, man. Basically, the whole meat of the first half of their Transformers continuity. Revolution was kind of not really a reboot, but it was a new jumping on point for readers after All Hail Megatron. And after All Hail Megatron, there was a load of comics that took place on Earth, and some that had to do with Cybertron and all that stuff that really fed into the whole Transformers mythos for IDW.
Okay. I think at the time, just based on the discussion that we had, that I thought All Hail Megatron led directly into Revolution, and then I read this, and I'm like, there's no way. There's a piece of the Sabruderville just missing here, if that's the case. Where we end with the Decepticons and the Autobots and the state of Megatron, a lot had to have happened to get to where we got to at the beginning of Revolution. So we'll dial back to that once we get to the end here. Did you read this contemporaneously, or did you pick this up after it had already finished?
I picked it up after it had already finished, and I read it in a very deconstructed method. I read the first half in trade, as soon as they released that first trade, and thought it was really cool, but at the time my finances weren't really conducive to buying comics, so I would buy a trade here and there when I could. And then I ended up reading the back half of it like a year later.
Oh, wow.
So I was left on this cliffhanger of what was going on after issue 6, and I had no idea what the rest of the story was for a while.
Well, according to the wiki, this is 1 year after the events of Maximum Dinobot, which is on my read list, just because of the name, Maximum Dinobot, which is also going to be the name of my next punk band. So, last question before we get into this. Did you read Maximum Dinobots?
I did not. I've not read much of Transformers before All Hail Megatron. All Hail Megatron was really my jumping on point to the IDW comics as well.
Any intention to ever go back and read some of these?
I've thought about it. I've heard rumblings of some pretty cool stories in the lead up to this crossover, this event. And there is actually one major plot point in this event that I had to go back on the wiki and research to figure out what was going on.
Was it the sideswipe headmaster thing that lost me entirely?
Yes, it was.
Okay, good. You and I can both be confused together, or I can be confused and you can straighten me out. All right. So I'm going to go ahead, and I have a summary here from Wikipedia, and as I said to Cole before the show, I'm just going to kind of read through this so you get a general sense of what the story is about. First, it was published between July 10th, 2008 and October 14th, 2009. The meat of the story is 16 issues. If you read it like I did in the complete All Hail Megatron with a red cover and the shadow silhouette of Megatron omnibus or hardcover, it actually has the 16 issues of All Hail Megatron, which we'll talk about tonight, a coda which is another 4 or 5 issues, and then a bunch of spotlights featuring random characters hither and thither. Cliffjumper being one of them, Blur, another, Fortress Maximus, Cup. So we're just going to focus on the main story of All Hail Megatron, which goes like this. After the aforementioned events of Maximum Dinobots, the Decepticons have the means to defeat the Autobots, win the war, and do as they will on the unprotected planet Earth. The Decepticons conquer New York City and hold the population hostage, and the United States military proves unable to stop them. The attack spreads to other cities around the world as well. Meanwhile, the Autobots are in a desperate state on Cybertron. With Optimus Prime in critical condition, the matrix of leadership in Decepticon hands, and a traitor suspected in their ranks. Tensions and tempers soon flare. The arrival of a second group commanded by Cup finally provides... Now I understand why Ronnie at the time was like, stop making fun of Cup, he's awesome. He really is in the story.
He really is.
Finally provides them with the energon needed to repair Optimus Prime, as well as more information about the betrayal. But the coming of the Insecticon swarm drives the combined Autobot forces onto the defensive. During a running battle with the swarm, Sunstreaker reveals that he was the traitor and sacrifices himself to save the others. However, another reason for the betrayal is that Hunter Neon is now a captive of the Decepticons. The Decepticons question their place now that the war is apparently over. Starscream begins to doubt Megatron's goals and secretly teams up with the Decepticons in another bid to overthrow Megatron. A rebellion soon ensues. The Autobots are saved by Swarm by the timely arrival of Deus Ex Machina, Omega Supreme, who transports them to Earth. A pitched battle with the Decepticons follows. It is revealed that the Sunstreaker betrayed the Autobots due to Bombshell messing with Hunter. The Decepticons are driven off, and the intervention of a disgruntled Thundercracker prevents the European Union from nuking New York City, though he pays for his betrayal. Megatron is severely damaged. Megatron is shot in the fucking head, is what happened. Jesus. Megatron is severely damaged by the combined efforts of Optimus Prime and the humans. The captive Hunter is euthanized by Sideswipe. Okay, so I have lots of questions. Hopefully you have some answers, but I definitely want to hear your opinions on some things.
Okay.
As far as a jumping on point for people who had not read anything before, and I am the ultimate jumping on fan here. I haven't read any of the Transformers IDW stuff. What did you think of this as a... when you first read it, were you super confused? Did you already have some kind of knowledge of what was going on, or what?
Well, one of the beautiful things about All Hail Megatron is they say it spins out of the events of Maximum Dinobots, but that's not, from what I understand, really the case. Maximum Dinobots ends, and then All Hail Megatron is the start of a new story. They call back to a couple of things here and there. The Sunstreaker situation is a callback. The weapon that they use is a callback. But other than that, it's pretty much all Cup's situation is a callback too. But other than that, it's all pretty much brand new material. Even the flashbacks in the fight between Megatron and Optimus, where in the flashbacks where they're on Cybertron, that's all new material. That happens between Maximum Dinobots and All Hail Megatron. So as a jumping on point, I think it really works well. It's got enough for fans of the previous works to be interested, but it sets a whole new stage and a whole new tone for what the comics are going to be going forward.
So I have to ask, did you ever see the third Transformers movie?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay. I'm
Mark,
guessing
I
not
have
a fan.
seen every single one of the Transformers movies in the theater.
Okay. Were you not a fan of Dark of the Moon?
It was okay. It was better than Revenge of the Fallen, let's put it that way.
Well, sure. My son trying to tell me a story about his day in school was better than Revenge of the Fallen. Good grief. Look, I love the Transformers movies, but Revenge of the Fallen is the one we don't talk about. I really like Dark of the Moon. And Dark of the Moon ends... This is the reason why I'm bringing this up. Dark of the Moon ends with the Decepticons wrecking Chicago. to the point where it's referenced in Age of Extinction as a reason for XYZ number of things happening that get that movie into motion. And, you know, the publication on this comic is between 2008 and 2009, and I'm wondering how much of what happens in this comic inspired the writing, if anything, of Dark of the Moon.
Oh, I'd imagine quite a bit. These comics were incredibly popular. They sold really well. They were the birth of... Well, we still have Transformers comics now because of All Hail Megatron. Before All Hail Megatron, it was just a series of short, like, miniseries and limited runs, and it wasn't... Now we have a monthly comic that's been coming out since 2009, every month.
Mm-hmm. So, really, All Hail Megatron kind of sounds like it inspired, like, an entirely new generation of Transformers reading fans.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so my couple of thoughts upon reading this, because it opens with the Decepticons just land on Earth. The Earthlings don't seem to know what Transformers are. Certainly when the Autobots show up later in the story, they're like, well, who's on what side here? So that was the first thing that was a little... I'm going to use the word confusing only because my only reference point is the cartoons. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I wonder what this whole series of Transformers books was like, because how do they not know who the Decepticons are? I'm going to let you jump in on that in just a second. But where the story begins, the Autobots, as I read in the summary, are abandoned on Cybertron with no way of getting off, and the Decepticons land on Earth with no Autobots there to stop them, and they just start wreaking havoc. And like I said, I was like, It explained how the Autobots got marooned on Cybertron later on in the story, so that's fine. I just thought it was a bizarre plot point that for all this time the Autobots and the Decepticons have been fighting, apparently the Autobots had been on Earth at one point, but not the Decepticons, to which I asked, what were they doing exactly?
Well, and I could be completely 100% off base with this because, like I said, I haven't read much of the stuff before All Hail Megatron. But from what I understand, there was a heavy emphasis on the whole idea of robots in disguise.
Okay.
In the precursor comics to this. The Transformers didn't show themselves to humans. There were a select few humans, I think like 4 or 5, that knew what the Transformers were, and nobody else did. So there were Autobots and Decepticons on Earth, and they were fighting. But they did it in such a way that it didn't spill out into the public.
The other thing I thought was intriguing, an idea that was definitely picked up on the animated series that we've been talking about, Earthrise and Siege, is the idea that the Transformers race has spanned across the galaxy. Like, they have outposts and dominion set up on hither and thither planet, and Earth is just sort of... It's not necessarily obviously a colonized planet, but they're aware of it, and, you know, the Autobots are like, well, no one go there, there's no reason for it, it's under our protection, and the Decepticons are like, perfectly good resources to convert to Energon. That seems to be the state of Earth when Megatron shows up. The other thing I have to ask, and man, I read this thing, and I really, like, it was the first thing I did this morning, it's fresh in my mind. I'm still not quite sure what Megatron's plan here was. It's like, just, you know, conquer the Earth, wreck New York, profit. I'm like, huh? You know, like, I kind of saw where Starscream was coming from at the end of the book, where he was like, because I think he even says to him, was like, so you've wrecked New York, you've conquered this planet, you've marooned the Autobots, they're not here to get in our way. What are you going to do with this mudball now that you own it? And I never got a clear sense from Megatron what exactly, you know, like in the cartoon, in the anime series, there's a clear direction for Megatron in that he is looking for resources to create Energon with. I didn't, and in the 80s cartoon, that was certainly the motivation on both sides. Was they were a starving race in need of Energon, and Earth had plenty of resources to convert, so thus the fighting. Here, I don't get a sense of what Megatron's point was.
Well, it gets a little complicated, and it's something that plays out in future comics, but Megatron's plan, quote unquote, is to cyberform the entire universe. He wants to make every planet into Cybertron. He wants to go to each individual planet. This is his actual plan. Go into each individual planet, destroy all endemic life, and make it Cybertron.
Oh,
so that the Transformers have homes across the galaxy.
Oh, the plot to Independence Day. Got it.
Pretty much.
Okay. What did you think about that?
Like I said, it gets expounded upon later. As far as All Hail Megatron goes, it's kind of thin. You learn more about why Megatron does what he does and why he hates organic life so much. And, well, not even really hates it, just sees it as worthless. And why he believes that everything should be made to serve Cybertronians as the series goes on. But as far as All Hail Megatron goes, just looking at this series in a nutshell, I think his motivation as a villain is kind of thin.
Yeah, like, they hit that. It's a weirdly paced story. And again, I don't want people to think like, oh, here we go. Here's the classic Radulich shits on everything. No. I enjoyed All Hail Megatron, but it's not without its problems. And pacing was definitely one of them. Because once you have the opening barrage, and maybe because it's a single issue thing and then subdivided into trades, it might have worked better, if you compartmentalized it as you read it. As a straight through story, the opening act is the third act of Dark of the Moon. They conquer New York. There's nothing there to stop them. They're giant, humongous robots, and they knock buildings over. It's a great bit. I love how this opens, but then they're just kind of standing around for a while. Mm-hmm. Like the Decepticons under Megatron, once they've destroyed New York, there's a lot of talking about like, where this is a place from which we can stage more attacks. And they talk about it, and you see a little of it, but that's kind of it. A lot of the story is spent either with getting Sam to the gun or with the Autobots trying to get the hell off of Cybertron.
Yeah, that is one of the most commonly levied problems with All Hail Megatron is it's got a great beginning and a great ending, but the middle is just kind of there. Yeah. It's just like we need a way to get from point A to point B. We need the stakes to be raised so that the ending is worthwhile, but we don't know what to do in the middle.
Right. The meat of the story, the entire second act is like, all right, well, I know you came for All Hail Megatron, but here's the Autobots bumblefucking around for a while.
Well, it's a whole lot of, on both sides, it's a whole lot of robots standing around doing dick all. I mean, the Decepticons are hanging out on Earth, every now and then taking out some humans, but mostly just standing around talking about how awesome they are. And the Autobots are sitting around on Cybertron saying, well, we're screwed.
And look, more Autobots showed up. And they also...
Oh, great. Now more Autobots are screwed. That's awesome.
You're right. You have the group that's led by Ratchet, Prowl, and Jazz, from what I could tell. And look, there's some great drama here. I actually kept thinking about how this would work as if they hadn't done what they did for the War for Cybertron. This too would have made a good anime series. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of drama here. So shifting the conversation, within the Autobots, as mentioned in the summary, somebody sold them out to the Decepticons, and the Decepticons were able to maroon them on Cybertron so that they could get to the Earth plane. That's where we find Ironhide, Prowl, Jazz, and a bunch of other Autobots, Bumblebee, etc. And Ironhide, not a thinker, he's pissed. He's like, right. What are y'all motherfuckers messed up, and I'm gonna kill somebody tonight. And he messes up Mirage. Like, I guess, if I remember correctly, that was kind of a thing for Mirage because he was the double agent, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
That was always the thing. It was like no one in the Autobots ever really trusted him, even though he gave them no reason to. He was just that was his job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a G1 callback. Mirage it was never stated that he was at one time a Decepticon, but he was a spy, and his whole gig was, getting inside information on the Decepticons and figuring out what they were doing and all that good stuff. And so the question always arose, well, how does he get this information?
Right.
As complex as the G1 cartoon ever got, that is.
And so we open with Ironhide, all kinds of pissed, and as I said, and because, he was like, well, clearly the guy who hangs out with the Decepticons, even though that's his job, he must be the traitor. And, he has to, at one point later on in the comic, he has to get pulled off of Mirage, and Mirage is like, how about this? How about you never talk to me again? How does that sound? So there's a lot of, the Autobots just trying to regroup. And then from the heavens arrive Hot Rod, Cup, Perceptor, Springer, that whole group. And mm-hmm. Cup, and so I can redeem myself in Ronnie Adams and the world's eyes and my disgust of the Cup character. He really is awesome in this.
Yeah, they took a character from the movie who was kind of a joke. He was the old man that told stories and, oh, okay, Grandpa, go sit in the corner. And they made him a legitimate badass.
Yeah, he's kind of like a Sergeant Rock kind of character. Mm-hmm. He is an old, general, basically. And I know there's a conversation later on in the trade between, and it might have been in the coda, between Optimus and Ironhide, where, Ironhide's like, you're it's the old, you're wet behind the ears kind of thing, and I don't trust you, Optimus. And so Optimus is like, great, teach me. Which I've seen that in a movie also somewhere. It was, we have the new young commander coming into the military unit, and he was like, I am nothing without you people. You teach me. And it was the Punisher. Mm-hmm. It was kind of the same deal in the Punisher, I think it's called The Platoon. Jesse and Chris Sheehan and I talked about it a couple months back. It was a similar thing where he was this young hotshot commander, and he'd come into this group of established veterans in Nam, and they were like, with you, you're too new. And he's like, no, I'm here to learn. I don't think I know everything. Very similar situation here with Ironhide and Optimus. There was a different thing going on with Cup, where in the story, and this is where it gets a little confusing for me. There was a thing they did with Perceptor where they turned him into a badass too. But there was there was also another bit with Cup where it's not the real Cup. It's some sort of revamped version of Cup. They know and the cigar thing that he's smoking is actually some form of medication to stop him from having flashbacks. It's very weird stuff.
Right. What's going on with Cup is I'm going to try and make this story as short as I can. Cup got stranded on a world with some weird radiation that completely ruined his brain, to the point where he just savagely murdered 6 or 7 rescue teams that had come to save him. And Springer finally was able to get him out of there and get him some help. And they rebuilt him from the ground up. And his little cigar, like you said, is medication that keeps him, it's low levels of the radiation from that planet that keeps him lucid. And without it, he starts having flashbacks again and starts thinking that other Cybertronians or evil zombies that are trying to kill him.
So it's a comic book for kids, as you can probably tell.
Exactly, for kids.
Yeah.
The big robots that turn into cars.
Sure. This is absolutely... My son would love this. He's 7. So anyway... so Cup and that whole gang show up, and... The plot going forward... And I got to talk about Sideswipe in just a minute, but the plot going forward here, Cole... help me out here, is they kind of get together, they're talking, they're kind of getting everyone caught up to speed with things, and then, for the most part, they're dealing with the Swarm, which is some sort of version of the Insecticons.
Right.
And eventually they get off the planet, but not before there's this long, complicated story of them running from the Swarm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Swarm is, again, as far as I know, a creation for All Hail Megatron. The Insecticons that we know, the Insecticons that are on Earth with the Decepticons, Bombshell, Kickback, and Scrapnel, are exceptions. The rule, the way Insecticons normally work, is they are just a mindless swarm of metal-eating machines that just have completely ruined Cybertron and will kill anything that moves. So the tension of the Autobots on Cybertron is, look, we're low on Energon, Optimus is in a bad way, and the Swarm could be right around the corner, just waiting to destroy us as soon as we poke our head out.
Yeah, it's funny. I've already said that this is kind of the plot to Independence Day. Well, there's your plot to the second Alien movie. Just kind of hanging about and nowhere to go, and there's monsters, in the ductways and whatnot that they're trying to get away from. They eventually will Sideswipe. We find out is the traitor,
Sunstreaker.
Sorry, Sunstreaker. Sunstreaker, we find out, is the traitor. Now, Sunstreaker has a bit of a backstory here. Now, if I remember correctly, wasn't he the Lamborghini in G1?
He and Sideswipe are both Lamborghini Countoks.
Okay. But he was an early G1er of the toys, and he was the yellow one, if I remember correctly. He was a pretty cool toy. And he was not a headmaster.
No.
Okay. They don't come along till much later.
Right.
Except that in this comic book story, somehow him and a human merged, and they use that term headmaster. How much do you know about that?
I know from my research, I know a little bit. One of the final storylines before All Hail Megatron, before Maximum Dinobots, was about headmasters. And they are exactly what they used to be in the old toy line. It is the robot.
Go ahead. You do it.
There's a smaller component that turns into the robot's head, and that allows the robot to transform into its robot form.
Now, if I remember correctly, the way that it was done in the cartoon was the head were actually exosuits manned by humans.
Yes. Back in the day, that was how they did it.
Okay.
In this one, in the comic, it's more of a surgery. Like, you don't get into a suit and then the suit folds up and becomes the head. You actually become converted into a partial Cybertronian so that you can transform into the head for the Cybertronian that needs one.
Because you know what the Transformers really needed? Body horror.
Right?
Go on.
But the whole plot line with this Hunter O'Neill, he's one of the handful of people in the previous comics that knew who the Transformers were. He starts out very anti-Transformer. He forms a friendship with Sunstreaker. They become best buddies. Sunstreaker gets damaged so that he needs to become a headmaster, and Hunter says, "I'll do it. I'll become Sunstreaker's head, and we'll work together as a partnership." Um, this is, you know, after being tortured, and then there's more torture, and there's this human group called the Machination that is involved. I'm not hugely well versed in this storyline, but basically the upshot of the whole thing is it's an incredibly traumatic experience for both Sunstreaker and Hunter, and it leaves them both completely broken as people.
Yeah, they flash back to some of this within the pages of All Hail Megatron, where he is like in Lilliputian being held down by humans, tied to the ground, and at one point his head is detached from his body, and he is just begging to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
It's all pretty horrifying. I mean, when I tell you that the folks over at IDW were like, listen, do whatever you want with this, whatever you think will sell books, just do it, because they were like, yeah, you know what we need to do? Torture one of the Transformers and make it an absolutely nightmarish experience.
Yeah, and they go the extra mile, and I think they really knock it out of the park of making you. One of the hardest things to do in a Transformers comic is these guys are giant alien robots who can do anything. They're super tough. They're super strong. They've been having this centuries-long war that has gone on longer than some of them have been alive. Why do I care? Right. And they really make you care about the horrors that this character has been through.
Well, that's the funny thing is they're actually talking a lot about like post-traumatic stress disorder and the effects of protracted war in a silly comic book about giant robots.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's always been one of the strengths of the IDW comics is they're willing to both take themselves seriously in their subject matter and be goofy. Like they're willing to slip on the banana peel when it's necessary. But at the same time, you're talking about a war that's been going on for centuries and characters in it that were never designed to fight.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is this becomes a platform to delve into like mental health and trauma and and how all of those things are affected, as I said, by an elongated, protracted war, to where the Transformers don't feel like robots anymore. They just feel like people. Mm-hmm. They are colorful and they are interesting, and obviously they look like robots. But as you're reading All Hail Megatron, this becomes weirdly, and so I said before, one of the problems I have with this is the pacing. One of the best things about it is while you think it's an action piece, it's actually a character piece.
Mm-hmm.
I
would totally agree with that.
This is absolutely about relationships between like Starscream and Megatron. This is about, I was talking earlier about Ironhide and how messed up he is over someone betraying them, and an Optimus Prime being injured and just and being marooned on Cybertron. And it isn't just like, I'm going to kick some ass. Like, he is messed up. I think that you have Jazz or Prowl, I couldn't remember which one, could have been both, where they are, like, struggling with the reins of leadership. Like, there's a lot going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they do a really good job, I think, of humanizing the different situations that the characters find themselves in. Like, you can see where Ironhide is coming from. They're alone, they're in danger, and he's the protector, and he failed. And he's got to deal with that. And how he deals with that is, I'm going to find who betrayed us, and I'm going to kick the scrap out of them. And then you've got characters like Prowl, who Prowl thinks he's a leader, but when the chips are down, when things are at their worst, he can't hang. And it falls to Jazz to take up the reins and keep them all safe and sane as they can on a dead planet.
Jazz in the G1 cartoon, he was voiced by Scatman?
Scatman Crothers.
Yeah, and so he had a very distinctive voice and personality. That does not come across in this. He comes across as just This is going to sound like an insult, but it's not. He doesn't come across as distinctively Scatman in the comic. He just comes across as a warrior. You know, he's another one of the soldiers.
Right. I'd agree with that. I think that's actually one of the problems that a lot of people had with this comic is it took some of the characters' individual voices and sort of muted them and replaced them with what the story needed. Mm-hmm. And Jazz was one of those characters.
Blaster too. Blaster had kind of a groovy, soulful kind of voice to him. You know, if you remember from the movie, no way two can play, and he does kind of a rhyme scheme thing. It's the late 80s, early 90s. What do you want from me? And they took that utterly away from him too. And this is, I think, to IDW Transformers' detriment. Some of this reads like, on the one hand, I like that. They're like, what if we took the horrors of war but did it with goofy robots? Great. Not everybody can sound like run-of-the-mill soldier. Right.
Yeah, and that's something that gets rectified as the ongoing series goes on, as we lead into, giving shades of what is to come. Bumblebee becomes the leader of the Autobots at one point for quite a while. Starscream becomes the leader of the entirety of Cybertron, revamped and revitalized Cybertron.
And let me guess, Starscream gets the trains to run on time. Everyone gets breads and circuses, and Cybertrons are running. And he just kind of walks out one day and says, "This is all I ever wanted. Why wouldn't anyone listen to me?" No, what?
It works better than it has any right to. But Starscream is still Starscream, and as Megatron says in one point of this comic, the only one that can't see that Starscream is great is Starscream.
Yeah, they have. That's what I talk about. Like, this is very much a relationship piece. There's a bit there, because Megatron and Starscream from the G1 and a little bit from the anime is very much a contentious relationship. Starscream's always one move away from stabbing Megatron in the back, and Megatron is all-knowing, all-seeing, and all-doing, and all-shooting in the face. And so Starscream gets away with nothing, and is always kind of a boob. And if I remember correctly, didn't Cobra Commander in the cartoon have that kind of a relationship with, maybe it was Destro or somebody? Go ahead.
I was not a huge G.I. Joe fan, but I know that there was some element of that in G.I. Joe. I don't know if it was with Destro or if it was like with one of the other big high up in Cobra guys like Zartan or whatever, but there was that dynamic.
Yeah, somebody was always kind of harumphing. I know Major Blood was always running away, yelling retreat. That I remember. And Baroness and Destro were a thing. But somebody, and Serpentor doesn't come along till later, but I remember there was always somebody kind of harumphing that Cobra Commander was a doofus. Anyway, a little sidetrack there. But Megatron says to Starscream, look, there's going to be a point where you're going to usurp me, and you're going to be powerful enough to do it, but today is not that day. And I'm like, wow, that is a kind of a really powerful line from a Megatron who is portrayed very differently in All Hail Megatron than I've seen him in any iteration, whether it be the anime, the G1 cartoon, any version of Megatron that I've seen. I've never seen him that thoughtful, especially to Starscream.
It really sets the stage. All Hail Megatron plants seeds that were coming to fruition a decade later. In 2018 or 2019, there was a crossover event between the two Transformers books at the time. And in the aftermath of that event, Megatron becomes an Autobot. He denounces the Decepticon cause, and he becomes an Autobot. And you see that same sort of, he finally sees everything that he's done up to that point and how wrong he was. And the seeds for that are planted here in All Hail Megatron when he's talking to Starscream, where he's talking about deception and, being usurped and all of that. and it's a slow burn from that moment forward to the moment at the beginning of Transformers Lost Light is the name of the series, where he says, or he gives himself up.
Megatron's a very fascinating character, and I keep kind of tripping back between G1, this, and the anime. But there are a lot of consistencies here, and definitely they all sort of feed from one another. They take from G1, etc. But Megatron is this character who fought from the bottom. He was a worker, and then he became a gladiator. And if you think about the mentality of somebody who, in order to eat, has to fight and kill, they're going to develop a world philosophy, especially if they can get people to join them, of might makes right. Only the strong survive. Mm-hmm. If that had not been in his blood, if that had not been in his mind, he would not have lived to see, to get to the point that he is at now. And so the best, we say this all the time in the Radulich Broadcasting Network, but the best villains are the ones that are convinced they are right. They are doing the right thing. And that's where Megatron is coming from. It's not so much that I want to conquer the universe just because. This is, it's more of everything in this world has taught me that if I don't fight and kill and scratch and crush my enemies, and become a pillar of strength, then I will be one of those people who is crushed and killed. And it's like, okay, yeah, we get where you're that's not the way to be, but I get why you're that way.
Right. And from his point of view, the only way to save Cybertron, you can't save Cybertron. Cybertron is dead. It's gone. So they have to make a new one. And so he will destroy whatever he has to save his people. In that regard, he's not so different from Optimus. But whereas Megatron is so focused on destruction and death and just breaking everything in hopes of making something new, Optimus is a believer in taking what is there and rebuilding upon it.
This is also the same plot as Man of Steel, isn't it? You have Zod who comes to Earth and says, well, Krypton's a thing of the past, and Krypton was going down in flames even before it actually did, and this is an opportunity, and he sees Earth and what it's done to Kal-El, and says, hey, this is an opportunity for us to remake Krypton, and we'll just remake it over the Earth, because really, these people are useless, these humans, these little yellow sun fleshy things. But it was the same mentality. It was like, look, my job isn't to save every sentient being in the universe. My job is to promote and save Krypton, or what's left of it. And while Man of Steel, not the greatest movie I've ever seen, at least you saw where, it similar to Megatron, similar to a lot of villains in, the world of science fiction and fantasy, you see where they're coming from.
The major difference between All Hail Megatron and Man of Steel is All Hail Megatron has more than 3 colors.
Yes, this was All Hail Megatron, not in sepia tone. So we're all over the road, but that's okay. We're having a fun conversation here. Sunstreaker sacrifices himself, as we said to the others, by throwing himself into the swarm so that everybody else can get away. Do you have any thoughts and feelings on, were you connected at all to the Sunstreaker character?
Again, I hadn't read much of the lead-up comics, so I didn't have that visceral connection, because Sunstreaker was really a viewpoint character, I'm led to believe, in the lead-up to All Hail Megatron. So it would be like, I don't know, it would be like reading DC Comics all the time and Nightwing betrays the Batman family and then sacrifices himself to save the day. Mm-hmm. Is the kind of idea that I was led to believe this moment was calling forth.
Right, but if you've never picked up a Batman comic before, who the fuck is Nightwing, and why do I care if he dies?
Exactly.
I want to talk a little bit about the conversation he has with Starscream. because this is a big theme of what goes on in the War for Cybertron, the anime, which is this idea of everyone's becoming very disaffected and disillusioned with the war. You know, Optimus is like, we can't lose. He is an idealist to the end. That is what makes Optimus Prime. And he is willing, and to his discredit, amongst the Autobots, they feel like a lot of them feel like, and he's the same way in the comic, as near as I can tell. He is willing to sacrifice as many Autobots as it takes to save this ideal, to save this way of life. It's worth preserving at the cost of everything. And there are some Autobots that are like, I could probably live with the way the Decepticons want us to live. It's fine. I just don't want to die anymore. How about that? And so there's a lot of frustration with Optimus, and there are people that are starting to wonder why continue the fight. You know, again, very much Vietnam. You know, what are we fighting for? And then on the other side of that, you have the Decepticons, very similar thing, you know, with Megatron going, nope, until all are one, till Optimus and the Autobots are wiped out, and we can establish the rule as it was meant to be. We will keep going. We will forever move forward. And there are Decepticons going, I just want to eat a sandwich. I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. And that's the premise from which Starscream is coming from when he approaches Sunstreaker, which is, aren't we all just a little tired of this? And Sunstreaker's like, yeah, I'm very tired of this. And the ambush that the Autobots are led into, and I'm going to let you pick up from here, was meant to bring the war to an end, and instead everyone is betrayed, and the Decepticons just slaughter the Autobots.
Right. It was intended, from Sunstreaker's perspective, it was intended to be a surgical strike. It was supposed to take out Optimus, basically, and end the war. But it ended up being that, of course, Starscream was lying because his lips were moving. And he used it to win the war. Not just end it, but so that the Decepticons succeeded and were able to continue their goals. He sold Sunstreaker a bill of goods saying that we'll call it quits and we'll start anew, and that was never his intention, which I think is a very Starscream thing to do.
Okay, I remember now the resolution to them. Once Sunstreaker throws himself into the swarm, Omega Supreme shows up, like you do,
because he was just hanging out. He was just picking his teeth.
Like, is Omega Supreme Bugs Bunny? He's always erupting from the ground somewhere.
Well, he shouldn't have taken that left turn at Albuquerque.
I'm saying, here we are, Pismo Beach, and all the energon we can eat. Like, what? What are you doing? The giant city with a missile. Why are you burrowing all the time? Anyway, so Omega Supreme pops up out of the ground. They're able to use this space shuttle that is a part of what Omega Supreme is to fly off of Cybertron. They show up to Earth in the ta-da nick of time.
Right.
Meanwhile, now how much do we know going into All Hail Megatron about Spike Witwicky?
He is a brand new character as far as I can tell.
Okay.
He and Colonel Daniel Sparkplug Witwicky are brand new to the IDW comics, as near as I can tell.
Okay. Now, they, of course, are G1 characters, but in G1, Dad Witwicky and Son Witwicky, Dad is like an oil drill worker.
He's some sort of construction guy or something.
I want to say, because of the connection to oil and thus Energon, he's working on like an oil platform.
You might be right.
Yeah, I might be wrong. Who knows? I just remember.
I think you are.
The way they drew him was Gene's wife beater construction helmet.
Yeah.
And then he has a son who is, mucking about, and he becomes friends with Bumblebee, and then in the movie, now he's an adult, and he has an exosuit, and he has a son who's mucking about with Hot Rod. Who becomes a bigger character in the post-movie iteration of the cartoon.
Right.
So the Witwicky, some element of the Witwicky family present in the live-action movies, present in the comics, obviously, because they're here now. They came from the cartoon. They were, I believe, an invention of the cartoon.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about the gun.
The gun is the final callback to the time before All Hail Megatron. The gun is actually reverse engineered from Shockwave.
Oh, is that why he's not in this?
Yes.
What happened to Shockwave?
He gets better.
Okay.
Basically, if I'm remembering correctly, he was on Earth. These guys called the Machination get a hold of him and use his technology to build a weapon that can destroy Cybertronians. And then he gets away, and he ends up fucking off to some other planet and rebuilding himself, and then he comes back later and is a big villain.
Not for nothing, but yeah. But if Megatron knows of all, or is at least minorly aware of what happened to Sunstreaker and Shockwave, and God only knows who else you haven't told me about yet, of what the horrible things humans have done to Transformers, I can kind of see where Megatron's coming from. Humans are horrible, according to this.
Well, that's one of the hallmarks of the IDW comics after All Hail Megatron is humans are dickbags. Because it doesn't in the conclusion to this, you see that the humans are uneasy with these giant robots. That unease turns into, we're just going to kill all of them.
Right.
No matter what badge they're wearing, we're just going to shoot them all and make them all dead, and then we won't have a giant robot problem.
Yes, the race of people who gets offended by minor insults on Twitter. Also, huge bloodlust. Easily he said in the wake of January 6th, easily provoked to violence and tyranny.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I guess it takes the right thing to motivate us. Shockwave saying to the people of Earth, listen, I lost the election, but it was stolen from me. Never mind. That's a joke that I called Shockwave Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen, in case you missed it. Moving on. All right, so the gun made from Shockwave, there's a little bit of the series that kind of introduces him, that he's on a mission. There's a lot of, when we're not with the Transformers, there's a lot of trying to get people out of the harm's way in New York. Much like Independence Day, humans have only 2 buttons, and one of them is nuclear weapons. It's like the button at Warner Brothers. You mash one button and Batman, the other button Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
In science fiction and fantasy, humans, one button, nuclear arms. That's the answer to everything. So they decide that there's no way to save the Earth without nuking all the Decepticons in New York City like you do. And so, despite the fact that they know there's a human on the ground, there's a weapon out there that can kill Transformers, and they are very much trying to make this a thing that's happening, and possibly turn the tide on things. The European Union's like, nah, fuck all that. It's been 5 minutes. You had your chance. Kill everybody.
It really is like that, though. I mean, it's legitimately, well, I guess that plan failed. Oh, well.
Look, I gave you guys plenty of time, and it's been 4 minutes, okay? I don't have time to wait for, humans to save themselves.
The kettle's on, and I can't let it get cold.
Yeah. So we're gonna nuke New York, and who is it? Who is it that does it? Thundercracker. Thundercracker does an interesting thing here because again, the Seekers they're always Starscream's backup band. I don't recall them having a tremendous amount of personality. They're just there following Starscream's lead. And in this particular case, they decided to give Thundercracker at least a code of honor to where he's like, I'm not betraying the Decepticons. I'm not turning, but dropping a nuke and killing everybody doesn't seem to be the Warriors' way. Seems like that's not how you should handle things. So he's going to go and help, and he takes out the nuke.
There is actually and this is more obscure Transformers knowledge that I have no idea how I came across. In Thundercracker's original bio on his toy, it talks about how he's uneasy with some of the choices that Starscream makes. And that's how they decided to make Thundercracker the guy who goes, look, nukes are bad, okay? I'm going to go take care of this so that we don't all die.
But I don't want to die today. Maybe I'll do something about this. Anyway, all right, so that was a character choice that made sense to you on a character that made sense.
I mean, it made about as much sense as he was the only logical choice, because none of the Autobots can fly except Omega Supreme, and they got to pick somebody that flies.
Sure. All right, Megatron and Optimus. We finally get to Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, or Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage, or Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Whichever, pick whatever one you like. And either way, it's Megatron versus Optimus. It's the reason we all bought tickets. And they have their fight. And, of course, Optimus Prime, for whatever reason, always gets his ass kicked by Megatron. It's a weird, like, there's always something that either something happens, and I'm building up to it. There's always something that happens to Megatron, or the situation changes in such a way that they have to abort the fight. But, like, for the warrior that Optimus is, and for the of equal stature that Optimus is presented as, he always seems to get his ass kicked in whatever iteration of the Transformers is out there. I mean, if you can identify a situation where I'm wrong about that, by all means. I mean, you know, even in the movie, you know, he had Megatron. I guess that's as close as you get. He had Megatron dead to rights. He does, you know, he's Megatron's standing over him. He's like, "It's over, Prime," and Prime goes, "Never." You know, the thing that we imitated in elementary school for years on end. And you know, and he's got the gun drawn on him. He's going to shoot him at point blank range, and he was like, "All right, Megatron, you're done." At which point, Hot Rod, you know, Megatron's is begging off like Ric Flair, but he doesn't see that, you know, there's a gun nearby, and so he's going to grab the gun and, you know, shoot Prime while in the midst of begging for mercy. And of course, Hot Rod jumps in there and effectively allows Megatron to shoot the shit out of Optimus Prime and kill him. So other maybe than that one instance, I don't know. Is there one where Optimus Prime actually got the better of Megatron?
It happens on occasion over the course of the IDW comics that they have several fights, and the fights are very even.
Okay. Like,
for every one that Megatron wins, Optimus wins another one. And every time Megatron wins, it's because there's something that happens to Optimus. It's usually that he's not able to basically go all out because of XYZ.
Okay.
And there's a big reason why he loses in this fight, and it's one of the driving forces of the series.
Now, are you referencing the fact that Megatron and then Starscream when you say him, you're talking about Optimus?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Megatron has the Matrix of Leadership, which I am assuming augments his strength.
Yes, it's what makes him a Prime. It's what gives him, at this point, it's believed at least, it's what gives him the ability to be that warrior leader that they need.
Okay. So yeah, that was one of the opening plot points of this thing, was that after they slaughtered the Autobots, they took the Matrix of Leadership, and that's where we find Prime before they were able to revive him later on in the story. In any case, they fight. Megatron gets the upper hand on Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime is on his last legs, and wouldn't you know it, from out of nowhere, Sam Witwicky shoots Megatron directly in the head. Right in the forehead. Just rooftop. Boom. From the grassy knoll.
It's got that magic bullet loaded.
Just boom, right between the eyes. One shot, one kill. And down goes Megatron. What'd you think of that?
I thought it was It was a logical choice. I couldn't think of another way other than just having straight up Optimus wins the fight somehow. Mm-hmm. I couldn't think of another way that they could write themselves out of that corner, other than, oh yeah, this weapon that we talked about that is able to beat the shit out of Cybertronians beats the shit out of a Cybertronian.
Now, the next thing that happens was a little confusing to me. I mean, granted, we just talked about this whole thing, this relationship between Megatron and Starscream, but Megatron just got shot dead. And I was thinking about Revolution, and I was thinking about, now we've already said that a lot happens between Megatron getting shot in the head in Revolution, but bear with me. I was thinking about it at the time, and I was like, how did we get from Megatron shot in the head to Megatron does not appear in this picture, and in the middle, Starscream picks up his dead body and goes, We'll see you around the old campfire. Everyone get aboard the Astro train. Let's get out of here. It was a strange choice, I think, even with the speech Megatron gives Starscream, for Starscream to turn around and be like, maybe let's not leave the dead body lying here.
Yes. I think if I had to extrapolate, and this is based on absolutely nothing that happens later, I think that the way that they could have explained it is Starscream just saw the humans using a Cybertronian weapon. He doesn't want to give them the fusion cannon.
Sure. That makes sense.
But in that instance, he could have just taken the gun. So I don't really legitimately know why Starscream would have picked up Megatron and taken him with him. When even in the old 86 movie, that was a plot point. Mm-hmm. Wait, I still function.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. As I think about it, I keep saying he was shot dead. Seemingly dead. He was almost dead. He was mostly dead. But he still functioned. And I think, one, you don't leave your comrades behind to be, possibly revived and tortured for information, questioned, whatever. So that might have been it. There might have been a lot going on in Starscream's mind of, at the end of all things, we are, in fact, soldiers. Let me not leave my commanding officer on the battlefield. We can throw him off the train later.
That's fair.
Yeah. And that's what happens, because he's aboard there in Starscream, all but holding a skull in his hand, going, Horatio, I need to say things to you. Just kind of really wrestling with his own conscience about whether or not to throw Megatron out the airlock. Mm-hmm. And the conversation he has with Soundwave should have had a laugh track.
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
Because there's Starscream going, well, Soundwave, he's mostly dead. And Soundwave's like, 5% life. I see, but don't we need that 5% energon for the rest of us? We're in bad shape here, but don't you see, Soundwave? And Soundwave says, we can make it 10. It's like, the fuck? Starscream, like, you can't see it in a comic book, but you can absolutely picture Starscream just rolling his eyes at Soundwave. Mm-hmm. It's a funny bit. I don't know if it was meant to be funny, but I was laughing.
It really goes to show that's one of the things that they gave Soundwave in the comics is he's loyal to two people, or to two things: his Minicons and Megatron.
Yep.
And that's it. That's the extent of his emotional core.
So in Revolution, he's tied up with Optimus Prime. He's a part of that group, and I'm just curious: did he ever find the kind of inner loyalty to anyone else that he had for Megatron?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't remember it if it did happen.
Okay.
He ends up becoming tied to a pan-Cybertronian cause between him and several Autobots and a couple Decepticons, where they basically just go, we're going to go do our own thing. We're going to go and start a planet and just be out of everyone's hair. And like, fucking, it's all C-listers. Like, Cosmos is there. Fucking, I don't even remember who else, but it's just like, it's nobody that you would care about, and then Soundwave.
All toys you find in a used bin somewhere.
Exactly.
It's Soundwave and the on-sale toys. Got it. Perfect. All right. The last thing that happened, the last thing I want your opinion on is Sideswipe, in like the final panel of the 16-issue story arc here, finds a tied-up, what is this fool's name? What's the human's name?
Hunter Onion.
Onion, yeah, Hunter Onion. Finds Hunter Onion strapped to this mechanism and looking horrible, and he euthanizes him right then and there. Mm-hmm. Want to give me some context here, and then your thoughts on that final panel?
There's not really context to give. This is the torture and mutilation of Hunter happens between the stories. Before All Hail Megatron, the last time we saw Hunter, he was palling around with Sunstreaker, saying like, "Boy, oh boy, I hope we sure have a bunch of fun adventures forever." And I'm not even joking.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, the next time we see him, it's that scene from Alien Resurrection. It's "Please kill me." So, yeah. One thing you can say about All Hail Megatron, shit got dark, yo.
Yeah. I think on Goodreads I gave this 4 stars out of 5. Mm-hmm. It's not the best thing I've ever read. It's not even as good as I wanted it to be. I was kind of hoping it would be. But it's still good. It's interesting. And it makes me want to at least somewhat read the previous installments of the IDW series, and it definitely makes me want to see what happened after between All Hail Megatron and Revolution. I don't have a million hours to read comics, so that's going to be a slow go. I might have to drag you back onto the show to discuss Maximum Dinobots because Maximum Dinobots.
Right.
But, you and I will have to talk offline and figure out the odd story between this and Revolution to talk about hither and thither. What do you think about that?
I would be totally down for it. I will gladly talk about Transformers till I'm blue in the face.
Your final thoughts on All Hail Megatron. The last word, sir.
I would agree with you. I would probably rate this about a 3.5 to 4 stars. It is important, I guess, is the best thing I can say about it. It's important for the fiction. It took the Transformers, who up until this point had been, even in the moderately more adult IDW comics, had been a kid's story, and really gave it that extra dimension where it was PTSD, and it was, how war changes people. At the same time, looking at it as a self-contained story, blocking out all things before it and after it, it's a little weak. It's got a middle that is just meandering around between 2 great third acts.
Okay. So the next time we will have you on will be for the ever-moving, never-ending Transformers Back to the Future series. It'll be you and Jesse. Mm-hmm. And this week I've scheduled that. I've scheduled that for the middle of April. I believe the last issue, and this time I wrote it down, so unless they move it, it ends on, the 4th issue comes out March 31st. So we will discuss the 4-issue limited Transformers Back to the Future series on April 12th.
April 12th, putting it into my calendar right now.
Hot diggity. In the meantime, in between time, February, the new month full of podcasts here. We're going to be kicking off the month with a revised DMU Hollywood. We are no longer necessarily doing the money section because what money? It's it's the pandemic films, you see.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. But there's still a lot of movie news out there. If you blink, you'll miss a movie changing its release date. So, we will have a dedicated movie section, and we will be reviewing Outside the Wire, featuring the dude from Snowfall and Anthony Mackie, who plays Falcon. We will also be reviewing the Royal Rumble, starring Old Man Edge, and the marvelous Bianca Belair. We will also, on the Metal Hammer of Doom, be reviewing the new not-so-metal album, Weezer, OK Human. And why? Because I like Weezer. That's why. And there's nothing else good in metal to talk about. And then finally on Friday, we will be reviewing AEW Dynamite Beach Break, featuring the 6-man tag of Kenny Omega and his goons versus Jon Moxley, Pac, and Ray Phoenix, I think. Some iteration of Death Triangle, whatever they're calling themselves this week. Last week, we reviewed The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, issue 6 through 8, the last season of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Netflix series. Italian power metal band Labyrinth, Welcome to the Absurd Circus. Season 1C of Looney Tunes on HBO Max. WWE Superstar Spectacle. We did 2 boxing commentaries, one for Trevor Bryant versus Berman Sturven. And then finally Caleb Plant versus Caleb Truax. And I hear you like to be on the Twitch, sir.
I do like to be on the Twitch. I was on the Twitch today, in fact. You can find me on Twitch at TheFilmTwit, twitch.tv/TheFilmTwit. You can find me on Twitter at TheFilmTwit, twitter.com/TheFilmTwit. And you can find me on Instagram, where I post my weekly comic review segments at TwittyCent. That is TWITTY cent.
Are you reading any good Transformers stuff now, besides the Back to the Future series?
The current monthly Transformers, which is now calling itself Transformers War World, is finally to the point where it should have started.
Okay, and how many issues are we in?
Like 20.
Oh, good. A rousing endorsement.
They really wanted to give us that background, man. Around issue like 17 or 18, Optimus finally got the Matrix and became Optimus Prime. He was just Orion Pax up to that point.
And so how much of this is Skylinks?
There has been no Skylinks yet.
Oh, how do you have that much Transformers backstory and no Skylinks?
Right? We did get to see some pretty cool Sentinel Prime action, though. That didn't shake out too well for him.
Terrific. I'll have to give that a look-see, and I think offline I may have to hit you up for top 4 or 5 encapsulated trades to read from the Transformers series. So we'll talk. We'll do lunch. All right, folks. That is our coverage of All Hail Megatron. I can finally say I've read this tome that's been sitting on my shelf for a year, since last Christmas. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you, Cole, for joining me tonight. Be well, be safe, and behave.